us are trying to do more than is realistic at any given time. I can't even judge. I do it to myself all the time. It's the water we swim in. It would be almost unrealistic to ask you to be realistic when setting priorities. However, when we have leadership responsibility, this pattern can become really problematic and really painful. And if you clicked on this video, I'm guessing you already know that, and I don't need to convince you of it. So what I'm hoping to give you here is really just a little bit of a different way to look at it and a little bit of a different way to approach it with the people with whom you set priorities, so your bosses and your colleagues, to maybe make it a little bit easier to clarify priorities than perhaps it has been in the past. So when we perpetuate this pattern of setting too many priorities, there's actually something really predictable that happens. It's almost like we're creating a menu for people to choose from because we're setting all these priorities, and essentially, just like I can't walk into Possibilities and eat 4 entrees just because I want to, your team can't accomplish more than capacity allows. In fact, my work is in capacity building, and one of the most surprising parts of this work is that it must begin with a fairly relentless commitment to a clear-eyed look at what the current capacity is and a willingness to practice working within that. And I say practice because we're never going to get it perfect, and it is hard. But the fastest way to kill your capacity and to waste your current capacity is to pretend that there are no limits on your capacity because of this pattern I'm about to share. So when you give people this menu, what happens is they essentially get to choose their own priorities. And so naturally, people lean into priorities that include work they like and serve ideas they believe in. And it sounds awesome, right? And it is until the work depends on other people to actually accomplish anything. And in most organizations, most of the time, work needs to flow throughout the organization in order to really make progress towards big strategic goals. So when people are essentially choosing their own priorities from this list that we gave them, they're not technically wrong, but the priorities start competing, and it leads to things like the lobbying between bosses that fractures confidence, and the competition and the friction between silos that makes people dread coming to work, and the passive aggressive remarks that make people dread coming to work and kill innovation. And as time goes on, this can become even more contentious because now people have their time and their effort tied up in their chosen priorities. They're expecting everyone else to meet them there. And in a way, fair enough. And if we're being honest, there's probably also some ego tied up in these things at this point. And these cycles will continue and will become more and more contentious, which actually drains your capacity. All that energy is moving side to side instead of forward. Breaking the cycle requires a significant amount of courage. I don't want to understate that. It takes the courage to admit where things have gotten out of hand. It takes the courage to lay the armor down, to maybe compromise a bit. But pretty quickly you start to realize it's just a much more fruitful way to live and to work, and the motivation comes back pretty quickly. So if you're experiencing the spin cycle, share this with your leadership team. And I'll tell you, the first time I did this, I was on a leadership team of probably 15 people, and I expected pushback. Not even pushback against the idea, but I just expected people to tell me it was unrealistic and just go with the flow. Nothing's ever going to change. But honestly, everyone was on board. It was almost like everyone was waiting for someone to name the elephant in the room and then get everyone in the room to address the elephant. Now, we wound up realizing we had, I think, 46 potential priorities that we had to sort through, which is not a small amount for a leadership team of 15, total team maybe 160. So obviously it didn't happen in one meeting. What I would suggest is focus on the coming month. And that way, if there are high tensions, you're not asking people to put whatever they've been prioritizing aside forever. Let me put it this way. Choose 1 or 2 things where you're saying we need to make this tangible progress this month, and that needs to be the top priority. And choose 1 or 2 things to deprioritize. And that can be tricky, especially if there has been a lot of effort already going into them. But we all know that letting it just fade into the sunset is going to do more harm than good. So when you can do this part well, when you can essentially say, we know we gave you this priority, we're having to change our mind for these reasons. And you can do it with respect and you can do it with sanity. it'll probably actually build trust. Nobody's going to believe that you're working on prioritization if you're not willing to deprioritize anything. That's just the reality of it. And at the same time, making it very clear that the leadership team is getting on the same page and is at least attempting to make a list of priorities that is much more calibrated to the current capacity, it's going to go farther than you think it'll go. So give it a try and then come back and tell me how it went.